Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have a prepared statement that I'm going to read, and I'm not going to take any questions. I'll explain that at the end of the statement. But I'm going to read this to you and try to read it as clearly and as carefully as I can. This is a statement of Citywide Protection Services, Inc.'s counsel, Andrew M. Sachs, Esquire. Today is Monday, February 6, 2017, 4:00 p.m. This is for immediate release. My name is Andrew M. Sachs, Esquire, and I have recently and subsequent to January 26, 2017, been engaged by Citywide Protection Services, Inc. to represent them in the provision of legal services and communication with the media, state and local agencies, and the public generally. I do not represent any employee of the company, but only the company itself. According to our investigation on January 26, 2017, at approximately 11:00 p.m., an employee of Citywide Protection Services, Inc. was required to discharge his firearm in order to save his life while protecting a private community as a private security guard. Now, the purpose of this conference and the statement that I'm making is to present as much information on behalf of Citywide that we feel comfortable and responsible in doing at this time. We recognize that there have been numerous requests for information from both the media and the public, and the company very much wishes to cooperate with all concerned. However, as much as the company has wished and continues to wish to discuss all information and relevant documents it possesses, there are many practical constraints which have made that and continue to make that difficult, or somewhat difficult for the time being. There is an ongoing police investigation by the Chesapeake Police Department. There is an ongoing investigation by the Chesapeake Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. There is an ongoing investigation by the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. There are privacy concerns and considerations which the company respects in connection with the community organization whom they were serving on the night of the incident. The company must balance its desire to speak publicly about what it knows against its desire to be responsible and respectful towards all of the ongoing investigations and the community directly involved. While the company no doubt has legal and First Amendment rights to speak freely about what it knows in an effort to set the record straight and to appropriately defend itself, I have advised the company that it must do so against the backdrop of this need to be responsible about and respectful to the ongoing work and interests of others, which has not been concluded yet. So accordingly, my comments today on behalf of the company are necessarily limited to only that which at a minimum we can feel can be released without possible prejudice to or possible interference with these other inquiries and interests. In due course, we are confident that both the company and its employee will be cleared legally from any wrongdoing whatsoever, and that it will be apparent that the employee acted solely out of his absolute right, his lawful right, to defend his life from an immediate and imminent threat of death or grievous bodily harm. However, until all of the pertinent agencies have completed their investigations and hopefully come to this same conclusion that we have, this statement presented today is necessarily limited and restrained by these other considerations. Now, I wish to point out that I am advised that Citywide, the company, has cooperated and continues to cooperate fully with the police and other state agencies, including the Department of Criminal Justice Services. Citywide Protection Services, Inc. has been in business in the Tidewater area for 24 continuous years. They have provided a high level of quality private security and protection services to a wide variety of private and public clients. They possess a spotless record and have served and continue to serve their clients and the community well and responsibly. Now, as far as pertinent background information, we can say this. Our investigation indicates that approximately 1.5 years earlier, on July 21, 2015, a different security officer from Citywide encountered a person whom we will identify as individual A just for privacy purposes, in an area in the community where individual A was present after hours at a time and place where and when he should not have been. In accordance with accepted protocol, the security officer provided individual A with a so-called bar notice, identifying individual A and pertinent identifying information, and placing individual A on notice that he was in violation of the community's rules by being where he was after hours and advising him that returning to that location during a period of the next 12 months would constitute a violation of the state trespassing laws. Our investigation also indicates that a little over 1 month later, on August 31, 2015, a second security officer encountered another individual, whom we will identify as individual B, again for privacy purposes, and whom is believed to be a relative of or otherwise closely associated with individual A, who also then received a similar bar notice for a period of 1 year for being at the same prohibited location as individual A had been on July 21, 2015. Our investigation further indicates that on January 16, 2017, this year, a third security officer encountered individual A, as well as a second individual whom we will identify as individual C, again for privacy purposes, but that individual is also believed to be a relative of or otherwise closely associated with individuals A and B, and that individuals A and C were parked in a blue van in yet another prohibited location in the community after hours. This third security officer, again in accordance with protocol, provided each of individuals A and C with bar notices, again identifying each of them and placing them on notice that they were in violation of the community's rules by being where they were after hours, and advising them that returning to that particular location for any reason for a period of the next 6 months would constitute a violation of the state trespassing laws. A fourth security officer, and the one who is the subject of the present occurrence, witnessed the delivery of these bar notices to individuals A and C and was present. So accordingly, ladies and gentlemen, prior to the night of January 26, 2017, when this tragedy occurred for everyone, the same security company had on at least 4 occasions over a period of approximately 1.5 years been required to serve trespassing bar notices on either individuals A, who received 2 notices at 2 different times, B, who had received a notice, C, who received a notice, and all of whom are believed to have either been relatives of or closely associated with each other, who were all barred from places where they were not supposed to be within the community after hours, and which required the dissemination of these bar notices to put these 3 individuals on notice that they could not trespass further in this manner. Now, our investigation reveals that on the night of January 26, 2017, sometime shortly before 11 o'clock p.m., the security officer in question was patrolling his designated community under an ongoing contract between Citywide and the appropriate community representatives. The officer observed individual C, the one that he had seen 10 days earlier and had observed receiving a trespass notice. He observed individual C walking through yards belonging to private property owners. The officer stopped his patrol vehicle and approached the person who appeared to be trespassing on private property. The officer walked with individual C back to a home associated with individual, now that says D, that should be C, ladies and gentlemen, so please make that correction on your statement. Now, I'll give you a corrected statement before you leave, if you will bear with me. But informed a home associated with individual C and informed a resident of the same household that the individual should be told that he could not trespass upon other person's property. Our investigation further reveals that a short time later, while making patrol rounds in another area, the same security officer observed a blue van driving in his proximity, which was the same van that he and another officer had encountered 10 days earlier on January 16, 2017, upon the occupants of which bar notices were served at that earlier time. Our investigation further indicates that on January 26, 2017, upon observing the same blue van then turn into the same previously barred area, the security guard took steps to make a responsible inquiry of the driver, whom he recognized from the earlier bar encounter 10 days ago as individual A, as to why the driver had returned to this barred area. Our investigation indicates that when, therefore, this particular security guard encountered the same individual, individual A, from 10 days prior after having been barred for returning to the same barred location, the guard had a responsibility and a duty to the community that he served to make an inquiry. Our investigation indicates that when the security guard approached the blue van on foot to make such an inquiry, the driver of the van, individual A, refused lawful commands from the security officer to stop and allow the officer to inquire. Rather, we are advised that the driver of the van, individual A, backed up and started moving forward, at which point the officer was in front of the van, again commanding it to stop, and so that he could inquire. Rather than stop, we are advised that the driver of the van, individual A, directed the vehicle towards the officer, who attempted to get out of the way and requested that the driver stop. However, whatever evasive action the security guard tried to take, the van tracked and followed the officer, ignoring commands to stop. Faced with an immediate threat to his life and safety, the officer brandished his weapon and again commanded the driver to stop, but the driver did not. Ultimately, faced with a situation in which he could not safely escape the oncoming van headed straight for him, the security guard, out of total necessity and in reasonable fear for his life and safety, fired in an effort to stop and repel the threat to his life and safety. Immediately thereafter, when the danger passed, the officer rendered immediate first aid and 911 was called. We are advised that the officer himself has cooperated fully and thoroughly with all appropriate law enforcement agencies. The company voluntarily drug tested the officer and the results were negative. The officer was fully authorized to be armed under both Virginia Department of Criminal Justice standards and the specific security contract in place between the company and the community client. The officer was in proper security uniform, displaying a badge, and operating a security vehicle with yellow utility lights running and hazard lights running at the same time. Now, in conclusion, our investigation reveals that as tragic as this event is for all concerned, and especially for the families of all of the persons involved, this duly authorized private security officer acted within the full scope of his lawful right to self-defense, to protect himself from death or grievous bodily injury, from an immediate and imminent threat in the form of a heavy motor vehicle bearing down on him. While no one can know what was in the mind of the driver for sure, fair inferences include, but are not limited to, that for some reason the driver became agitated or inflamed because of the security company's ongoing contacts with him and family or close associates in the company's efforts solely to protect the interests of the community they served and enforce the state trespassing laws, or that he was attempting to evade or block a lawful effort to investigate his trespassing, or both. Now, Citywide Protection Services, Inc. expresses its deepest sympathies and condolences to the family of the deceased, but strongly believes that the actions of its employee, as serious and grave as they were absolutely necessary, and that any reasonable security officer in the same circumstances would have been forced by necessity to do the same thing. In concluding, I return to my original prefatory remarks. Citywide would like to say even more, but feels that what has been released today is the extent to which it can, in order to give continuing due deference to the other agencies and interests involved. At the appropriate time, the company will gladly provide as much further information and even documentation as the law and other constraints that may be on it now might allow. We submit, however, that this candid release today should put to rest any of the unsupported rumors, innuendo, and speculation that this very unfortunate event has brought about, and should clear the good name of Citywide and its decades of service to the community. For all of the reasons just stated, we are not at liberty to take any questions at this time. But as soon as we feel that we are able to do so, we will have a further press conference where we hope to be able to open it up to all of you. And I say that with much respect to you all and the public. Andrew Sachs.
Andrew, how do you feel about the protesters outside the office?
I'm not going to comment on anything right now with respect to the case. I mean, I'll say this as far as protesters go. People have an absolute right to protest and have their say. It's a free country, it's a democracy, and people should be allowed to express themselves how they feel as long as they're lawful and peaceable. So that's not an issue. No one is offended by that at all. But it is just as important that this statement be disseminated, because based on everything that we have understood and been able to determine, we believe this is an accurate statement in summary of what happened, and that hopefully this will put an end again to all of the what I call rumor, speculation, and innuendo, and will demonstrate to people that, as tragic as it is, it was a necessary event in the course of a man's protecting his life.
Mr.
Now let me do this.
Your investigation, though, your statement and your investigation is from what perspective? As far as, I mean, did you talk to any eyewitnesses? Did you hear any?
I'm not going to.
Did you talk to employees?
I'm not going to get into the sources of my investigation any more than you get into the sources of yours. But I will tell you, in good faith, as an attorney, a licensed attorney, an officer of the court, I have made as diligent an inquiry as I can, reviewed documents, conducted interviews, and done what I can to assure myself that, at least from what we're being told, that this is legitimate and honest. So,
I just had a question about the disconnect, because we were told by the actual community organization that there was a contract that said unarmed service guards. This says there was. Where's the disconnect? Is it on their end, or?
You'll have to ask them. I'm not going to comment. I don't think we're at liberty to release the contract. Perhaps we could, but I feel like, in deference to them. But I will tell you that what is in this statement, that the company was authorized to have armed guards, is absolutely, without any question, well documented and clear. There's no issue about that whatsoever. And anyone who says that's not correct is not privy to the actual documentation.
How about the company? Are they trying to contact the victim's family, or have they tried to initiate any move so just to communication better? And
I think that they decided to communicate through me, and what's in this statement and their condolences and their sympathies are exactly how they feel, and we hope the family will take it at face value.
Andrew, it's not your style not to answer questions from the media.
I understand that.
As to why.
Well, I believe strongly in what you do, and I believe strongly in a free flow of information. But as I have explained in detail, I went to great length, and it's in the statement, maybe more than necessary, to explain why we do not feel like we can say but so much. We have to be very deferential to the fact that there are other agencies, public agencies, police, Commonwealth's attorney. We want to give them an absolute free hand. We believe that if they follow the trail that we believe exists, that they will exonerate the employee. The company will be seen in the proper light. But I don't want to start to answer questions beyond what I've said in this at this time.
Is the employee currently working?
I'm not going to, again, I'm just not in a position. We have taken a lot of time to craft the statement to make sure that it was accurate and thorough and complete, and this is as much as I feel like I can fairly say right now.
We've been told a lot that there have been language barriers between the two sides. Has that been an issue at all for you guys?
Not for me. No issue for me at all. It's been no language barrier for me in doing anything that I'm doing.
With the bar notices, were they issued in writing? And as
yeah, they're written bar. The bar notices are in writing. They document everything. The incident itself is well documented by the company. The bar notices are well documented, and so these aren't just things being, people recollections. And no, there's a written trail of all the things of all the bar notices that I've made.
Can you release the bar notices? And then my other question is, you know, the family has said there was a language barrier. You know, given that, how do we know that Mr. Chen and others understood what the bar notices meant?
Well, I'm not going to comment. I'm not going to try to speculate. I think that the bar notices speak for themselves. As far as releasing the bar notices, I think that there are probably reasons why that wouldn't be appropriate. There is a contract between, or was at the time at least anyway, governing the relationship between the security company and the community that hired them, and those bar notices might be considered proprietary to the community. I'm going to leave to other agencies who may be in a position to do that, and at some future time, if and when we feel the legal constraints are gone, I think the company will be glad to release all the information that it has. But in fairness to them, you have to appreciate they don't have the same freedom of expression and action that all of you might have, or even I might have, in a matter, because this is a police matter. It's a criminal investigation. There's a state investigation. There is a private community client, and we don't want to tread on anybody's toes. But at the same time, we felt obligated to get something out as best we could to give the general contours of what we believe happened based on what I have been told from various sources, and hopefully that will be sufficient for now to quell any discomfort in the community that there was some sort of Rambo cop or something like that out there, some rogue officer. It's nothing like that at all. And I think if you take what we've said in this statement based on what inputs we've had and accept this as our version, then I think you will see that it makes sense. It's tragic, it's unfortunate, but in fairness to this company, it appears that their employee did absolutely what anybody else would have done under the same circumstances, or he might be the one who's dead, or perhaps paralyzed or grievously injured for life.
Without saying their names or any sources, were the witnesses that you talked to? Are they eyewitnesses?
I don't want to get. I'm very reluctant to tell you who I've spoken with or the inputs, because I do not want to do anything that would possibly interfere with the police investigation. So I'm not going to name any sources, but I represent to you that this is information that is more than just third hand or something like that. I mean, we've done our best to verify that, just as you do, to verify information and make sure that we're giving you as accurate a rendition as we can give under the circumstances.
Is there video or audio of what happened?
I don't know that. I don't know. The police can answer that question. I don't know.
If their family was such a problem, though, and you've documented a couple times that they were pulled over by the company, why not just call the police and let the police handle it? Are they qualified to pull a gun on somebody?
Well, I'm not going to get into all the legalities of. This is a private security company that is licensed by the state of Virginia to provide protection and security services, including armed services, and there was a contract in place with a private association, as there are many between many private communities and private entities and homes and businesses and public entities. So there is no issue here about that. That's not the question. I think the question that people have raised is what was the justification for the discharge of the weapon, and I think I've answered that clearly without any equivocation in this statement.
But they're trained to deal with that type of a situation as a security guard?
I'm going to rely on the fact that this was a DCJS certified agency, and that agency, that DCJS oversees the provision of private security services in Virginia, and I have no this company's been in business for 24 years and is well known to DCJS. I have no question about the qualifications or the propriety of the provision of the services in this case. Again, the issue in this case is that people have raised is what was the reason for this, the justification. And if what I have represented to you in the statement turns out to be the facts, then it isn't even a close question that this was a justifiable shooting, a tragic one, a very sad one. But we live in a country where we have a right to defend ourselves and our lives and our persons when we are threatened with death or imminent bodily harm. And that's what our investigation indicates is the case here.
Was he a full-time security officer, or was he was he a Chesapeake police officer?
I've already answered more than I really wanted to. I don't feel qualified to give you every detail of every aspect of this, because I'm not the police, and I haven't been able to have all the access that they have. I've had access to enough to be comfortable in saying what I've said, and I think I want to stand on that.